Hello everyone, Jarrett Hoffman here with another HBCU Sports exclusive video here to recap week 9 of the HBCU football season. A lot of ribbon action happened this weekend, and we're going to start in the SWAC with the SWAC East being up for grabs. Now, why is that? That's because the division leader and the reigning conference champion Jackson State for the second straight year are down by the Grambling State Tigers. Unlike last year, this counts toward their SWAC record. So now Jackson State is 3-1. They are upended by a game-winning field goal in the final seconds by Josh McCormick, a 44-yard field goal on what was a dramatic final drive by Grambling State that unfortunately saw their starting quarterback Zay Tset be stretchered out the game with an injury, and prayers to him and hoping that he's well. Jackson State also came away with an injury, by the way, to their starting quarterback. Jacobian Morgan came out the game with an apparent leg injury, was seen on the sidelines in street clothes and a boot with some crutches, walking with the assistance of crutches. So hope he's doing well as well. So a lot of injuries that took place in that game, but it's Grambling State that comes away with the win. And now Jackson State is in a dogfight in the SWAC East, because as we take a look at the standings, they are now in a three-way tie at the top of the division with Alabama State, who came away with to put it mildly, a dominant win in the Magic City Classic, a 56-14 win over Alabama A&M in the Magic City Classic, and Bethune-Cookman, who got a 31-14 win over Arkansas Pine Bluff to improve to 3-1. The team that's blocked by, look, let me just take this down real quick so you can see Florida A&M is not too far behind. You know, they had a rough start to the year, but Florida A&M starting to get it together. They've won their last two. Now they're 2-1 in conference. Had their game against Mississippi Valley State not gotten canceled or postponed earlier this season, maybe they'd be 3-1 and we'd have a four-way tie at the top of the SWAC East. But as of right now, we have three teams tied at 3-1 in the SWAC East in conference, and Florida A&M a half game behind at 2-1. Starting with the Grambling Jackson State game, it just looks like Grambling has been a thorn in Jackson State's side. Of course, the 2 years under the past administration, Jackson State, got over that hump and beat Grambling in those 2 years. But since TC Taylor took over, it looks like Grambling has restored order in that series, and they've won the last two now. And this may be a loss that keeps Jackson State out of the conference championship game once again. That's not my prediction. Not at all my prediction, but it is a possibility, because there's two of these teams in this graphic Jackson State has not played yet. Of course, they beat Alabama State in what was the game of the year a couple of weeks ago. They beat them on their homecoming. I believe the score was 38-34. But they still have Bethune-Cookman on their schedule, and Bethune-Cookman has been performing very well on offense in these past couple of weeks. So that's not going to be an easy game for them. And in their next contest, they travel to Tallahassee to play Florida A&M. So so two pretty significant tests remaining on Jackson State's schedule. And in before this game, we were going into it thinking like, I don't see Jackson State taking two losses over the remainder of the season. Well, they just got their first one against Grambling State, and if Jacobian Morgan is expected to miss a significant amount of time, and if the defense plays like they did in this game, which by the way was not very good, then I'm not sure that Florida A&M and Bethune-Cookman are automatic wins, considering those two teams are on a heater right now. So that there's a lot of excitement to be had in the SWAC East. The SWAC West, it's looking like it's going to come down to a matchup between it's going to come down to Prairie View A&M, whether or not they slip up in the final weeks, because they already got their win over Texas Southern, who was the next closest team to them that they've already beaten. And they've also already beaten Grambling State, who we just talked about. So it's really going to come down to who comes out the SWAC East, and it's not as cut and dry as it as it was before we came into this weekend with Jackson State, holding the keys to the division. Alabama State, they, I believe they've already not, but I believe I know they've already beaten uh, uh, Florida A&M. They blew the doors off of Florida A&M a couple of weeks ago. I believe they played Bethune Cookman. Did they play Bethune Cookman? Am I did I just erase that from my memory that they played Bethune Cookman already? I'll get my crack research staff on that. I don't have a crack research staff, but yeah, a lot to be played for in the SWAC East now that it is 11 level playing field after Jackson State loses in the inaugural Las Vegas HBCU Classic, and Alabama State, Bethune-Cookman, and Florida A&M all handled business. So we're on the road to the conference championships with a level playing field and a lot to look out for in the SWAC East. Next up, as we remove this, we're going to talk about Albany State is now the last unbeaten standing in the SIAC. They handed Benedict their first loss of the season, and in pretty convincing fashion, a 31-3 win for the Golden Rams, and the return of star quarterback Isaiah Knowles. Isaiah Knowles was sidelined with an injury in the Allen in the first half of the Allen game, I believe 3 weeks ago, and had well no excuse me 4 weeks ago, and he missed the past 3 games, all of which Albany State kept its head above water, winning each of those matchups to set up this matchup against Benedict for the last two unbeaten teams in conference play in the SIAC, and Albany State comes away with the win. Isaiah Knowles showed no significant signs of rust, had 394 on 22 of 37 passing in that game, scored 3 passing touchdowns. So it's good to see that he did not lose that passing touch while he was out with injury. The run game did what it needed to do. Ty Weish had 75 rushing yards on 10 attempts. Algernon Thomas had 64 rushing yards on 13 attempts. And the defense of Albany State performed very well, forcing a few turnovers, I believe 3 in the game, and held Benedict to 3 points, the first time this season that Benedict did not score a touchdown in the game. Nearly pitched a shutout in this one until Benedict hit a late field goal to take the shutout off the board. So, looking at the standings in the SIAC now, it is a 3-team race between Albany State, Benedict, and Kentucky State. Kentucky State has new life. They had an idle weekend this weekend, so they were very much hoping for a Benedict loss, considering they already lost to Albany State earlier this season. So they really needed a Benedict loss, and they got it. And now they return to conference play. Benedict plays Virginia University Lynchburg in their homecoming, so they won't be in conference competition this week. It'll be up to Kentucky State to keep themselves in the race. Essentially, if they win, they will hold the keys to whether or not they are in the SIAC champion. Well, they still need some help in the final week of the season when I believe Benedict plays Savannah State, I want to say. Yes, Savannah State. They play Savannah State in the final week of the season. Kentucky State this weekend goes up against Clark Atlanta, who suffered a tough loss against Edward Waters. And speaking of Edward Waters, they also had one of their players in, leave the game injured. I want to look up his name so I can give that young man his proper just due. Jarmaris Spates. So prayers up to him, and I hope that he's doing well. Hope that he's recovering well. Edward Waters, Zachary Faison put out a statement about his condition, says that he's in good spirits. So glad to hear that, and I hope that he recovers well from his injury. But Kentucky State, they will go up against Clark Atlanta, who it's been a pretty disappointing season for Clark Atlanta. They've dealt with some injuries, and you know so they will be coming in to play spoiler. Is this in Frankfurt? Or this is in Frankfurt, so Kentucky State will have home field. If they get past Clark Atlanta this weekend, they'll have Lane in their final week. still winless Lane. So that not saying that it's going to be easy, because it's never an easy game in the SIAC, no matter what the record says. But I like Kentucky State's odds against Lane. So Albany State, they are the number. They have firmly stamped themselves as the number one team in the SIAC right now. And now with Isaiah Knowles back in the fold, you'd be hard pressed to see me predict anybody but them. I've been predicting them from week one, saying that they were going to win the SIAC. It was looking touch and go without Isaiah Knowles in the lineup. Some inconsistencies in the passing game without him was kind of had me worried about their SIC championship hopes. Seeing Isaiah Knowles in this game against a very good Benedict defense, by the way, all of my doubts about whether or not Albany State can get it done are gone. And it's very important to note that they got that win against Tuskegee. We're going to look back at that game and say that's what got Albany State to the SIAC championship game. If they still got to get it, they still got to win in the final 2 weeks, or they still got to win next week to clinch this title, a berth in the title game. They go up against Savannah State. So Savannah State is going to be playing spoiler the last 2 weeks of the season. So they get a win against Savannah State this weekend. And we're going to be looking at that Tuskegee game and saying that's what got Albany State to the SIAC championship game. For those who don't recall that game, that was the game where it was a defensive battle. And Albany State, by the skin of their teeth, came out with a 7-3 win off a late interception when Tuskegee was driving down the ball downfield and was having some pretty good success, throughout the second half. But Albany State was able to keep them scoreless in those drives, and a late interception got them the win. We're gonna look fondly on that game and saying that's what got Albany State to the SIAC championship game. So Albany State with a chance to clinch a title game berth this weekend with a win against Savannah State. Kentucky State can keep its hopes alive for a SIAC championship berth with a win against Clark Atlanta. And Benedict is going to just be hoping and praying that Savannah State plays the best game they have this season, and potentially improves their hopes of an SIAC championship berth. If Kentucky State gets a win, then in the final week, Benedict will go up against Savannah State with a chance to clinch the title berth. So if Benedict loses to Savannah State and Kentucky State wins in the final week against Lane, it'll be Albany State and Kentucky State in the SIAC championship game. Does that just not pique your interest? Are you not entertained? Oh, all right. Moving on, we have Delaware State snapping its MEAC losing streak, winning in its conference opener against North Carolina Central, playing homecoming spoiler to North Carolina Central, and coming away with a 35-26 win. Deshaun, look, I got to give credit where credit is due. At the beginning of the year, Deshaun Jackson on MEAC Media Day called his shot. He said, hey, look, they going to regret it putting us last in the predicted order of finish. We are not trying to waste time. We want to be in the Celebration Bowl this year. And they make a statement in their conference opener, beating a North Carolina Central team that was performing as well as you possibly could on offense. Just 50-point games, 40-point games, just dominance in the passing game. And they still perform pretty well in the passing game for the most part, but it was Delaware State's run game that continues to be a thorn in people's side. 241 rushing yards in this one on 51 attempts. Marquise Gillis had 108 yards on 21 attempts, had 2 touchdowns in this game. Caden Bennett, who for my money might be the leading candidate for the MEAC Player of the Year. Walker Harris is going to warrant some mentioning in that discussion, but Caden Bennett, man, 212 in the passing game, 9 of 15 passing, 3 touchdowns, has 61 rushing yards on 11 attempts. This Delaware State team, if they're not able to get to the MEAC championship this year, I see them getting there eventually. if they don't get there this year. Even if they don't get there this year, I could see it happening in the future. Like Deshaun Jackson has this team very motivated. The talent is there. The one thing they need is an upgraded secondary. The pass defense is just not going to cut it if you're going to be a championship team. It's just not, But that the pass rush was there. They got 4 sacks on Walker Harris in this one. But all they need is a secondary. If they get a secondary, it's going to be scary hours for the MEAC with the Delaware State performing the way that they're performing on offense. But this MEAC championship race just got shook up. North Carolina Central is not out of it. They're going to have to hope for a couple of losses for Delaware State. And South Carolina State is still in the mix, who also played homecoming spoiler this weekend against Norfolk State. I forget the final score of that one, so don't ask me. But yeah, and Howard also they were entrenched in a battle that went into overtime against Morgan State, and they came out in a win in that one. So that the opening weekend of conference play in the MEAC was very telling. Delaware State has established itself. They are not going to be an easy win. This and by the way, I forgot to mention they snapped their MEAC losing streak. This is their first win in conference play since November of 2022. They had lost their last 12 conference games going back to 2022. We're 0-5 in the last 2 seasons in MEAC play. And Delaware State gets a big statement win against a North Carolina Central team that has championship aspirations. A team that you could arguably say that North Carolina Central was performing better than any team in Division I HBCU football in the past 3 weeks before the bye week, of course, when they were idle. But you could arguably say they were, but you got to look at the opponents also. Now, in hindsight, you got to look at the opponents. You got a North Carolina A&T team that is rebuilding. You got a Florida A&M team that's still trying to find its footing under James Colsey. But look, the numbers they were putting up were still crazy, no matter who you facing. But Delaware State, gets a win in that one, and I don't know, man. There's a good chance that Deshaun Jackson could call his shot for real and get this team to Atlanta. That's how well they played in this game, and that's how well they have played throughout this season, despite a couple of hiccups. You could arguably say that their record should be better, if not for that bogus ejection earlier this year, and I forget who they played in that game. I believe it was Sacred Heart, but yeah. Delaware State snaps its MEAC losing streak, and they have turned that MEAC championship picture upside down. So we got a lot of great football to come in the MEAC, and looking forward to see how that plays out. Next up, we have a CIAA championship berth up for grabs this weekend when Fayetteville State does battle with Johnson C. Smith. Both teams came out with wins this past weekend. Fayetteville State knocked off Shaw 31-13, and Johnson C. Smith, I forget who they beat. I'm sorry. I thought I remembered when I started talking, but I didn't. Johnson C. Smith beat Winston-Salem State. That's just me. That's me trying to get on WSU Ram Nation good side, pretending like I forgot. No, I really did forget. But Winston-Salem State, Johnson C. Smith gets a win 52-27 to set up this matchup as we pull up the CIAA standings. And we see that Virginia Union and Fayetteville State, both with 5-0 records. Johnson C. Smith 4-1. And essentially, it's win or go home for Johnson C. Smith. They already have a loss to Virginia Union on their schedule. So a loss to Fayetteville State will essentially eliminate them from a conference championship race, and it'll officially be Virginia Union versus Fayetteville State. No matter what happens, it'll be Virginia Union versus Fayetteville State if Fayetteville State wins. I don't even know why I have Virginia State up there. They're essentially going to be officially eliminated this weekend, depending on who wins between Johnson C. Smith and Fayetteville State, because both of their conference losses are to those teams. So no matter who wins, Virginia State will be virtually eliminated. So this weekend it'll be the Kelvin Durham, Brian Lane, DeAndre Proctor, and that Fayetteville State defense. And I don't know, but what I will say is this: we got to give Richard Hayes a lot of props. Last year was a down year for Fayetteville State. A lot of people wrote them off. I said a lot of people to try to shield myself because I was one of those people that wrote off Fayetteville State. I said that this is going to be a down slope for them, that they were going to be in their rebuilding stage. And Hayes said, nah, that's not happening. No, we getting back in this championship picture this year. And they have done it pretty spectacularly. This defense has performed very, very well. I've always said about Fayetteville State, even when they had their down year last year, that this is a team that no matter what, you cannot count them out, even though I did, because they always make those winning plays when it matters. Even if they don't perform well in quarters 1 through 3, they make those winning plays when it matters. When it matters most, when the game is on the line, and they've been doing that all season and pretty consistently, not just in not having one great quarter after 3 bad quarters. No, they've been putting together 4 great quarters, and they are one win away from a CIAA championship berth as a result of that. So essentially, Virginia Union, all they need is Virginia Union needs a win because they play Virginia State in the final week. So Virginia Union this weekend plays against. They play. Huh? Do they not play somebody this week? Or am I? Oh, my bad. They play Bluefield State this weekend. My bad. I'm looking at my notes, but they play Bluefield State this weekend. Virginia Union needs a win in order to clinch their spot in the CIAA championship game. With the loss, they will go into Virginia State, go into a matchup with Virginia State. They'll be the home team in that one. But if they lose to Bluefield State, they somehow lose to Bluefield State, it'll be Virginia Union versus Virginia State with a spot in the CIAA championship on the line. So, also, I believe if Virginia Union was to lose this game against Bluefield State and they lose to Virginia State, that means Johnson C. Smith will then be in the CIAA championship game. So, there's a lot more to that championship puzzle in the CIAA. But this weekend, either Johnson C. Smith or Fayetteville State could potentially bring itself one step closer to a CIAA championship berth. A win will essentially do it for Fayetteville State, but a loss for Fayetteville State could leave some muddy waters. A win for Virginia Union this weekend will absolutely clinch it, though. A win for Virginia Union will absolutely clinch it, and a win for Fayetteville State. I know I'm confusing y'all. I'm rambling. So let me say this definitively. A win for Virginia Union over Bluefield State will clinch them a spot in the CIAA championship. A win for Fayetteville State over Johnson C. Smith will put them in the CIAA championship game. A loss for Fayetteville State and a win by Johnson C. Smith will give them the head-to-head against Fayetteville State. And if they win in the final week, then it'll be Johnson C. Smith in the CIAA championship game. All right. I said it as clearly as I possibly could. I hope I didn't confuse y'all. So we're going to move on to the last topic of this takeaways video, which is Florida Memorial's offensive explosion. And I don't know if words can even describe how dominant Florida Memorial was this weekend. I don't have the graphic to prove that this actually happened, but trust me, guys, it actually did. Florida Memorial against Thomas University. Keep in mind, this was on the road. Florida Memorial comes away with an 85-7 win. That is not, I did not say that wrong. That's what happened. Florida Memorial this weekend on the road against Thomas University got a 85-7 win. That is insane. And this is not new for Florida Memorial against Thomas University, because last year they beat them 75-21. 70 in the last 2 games against Thomas University. Let me do the math on that. 160 points in their last 2 games against Thomas University. That is ridiculous. And now let's pull up the numbers real quick. Teldrick Wilcox scored 8 passing touchdowns in this game. 8. Excuse me, Tedrick. I put an L in that man's name. He did not take an L of this one. No. 8 passing touchdowns. As a team, they recorded 3 passing touchdowns. Nigel Osborne had 115 on 11 carries and a touchdown. And this one was the leading rusher for the game. And what's pretty remarkable is I believe Florida Memorial, I think they only recorded they forced 3 turnovers in this game. So I was about to say they didn't force any turnovers, but no, they did. 3 fumble recoveries in this game. And I don't know what else to say. That is remarkable. 85 points after scoring 75 against them last year. And that was under a different head coach. Now, their current head coach was on the staff of that team, but that's 85 points in a game. I don't care who the opponent is. That's incredible. That's impressive. But the thing that kind of gets me is that they went into the fourth quarter up 49-7. And for some reason, they decided they want to score 36 points in the fourth quarter when the game was already decided. I don't understand it. I don't understand it. You had the win already, Florida Memorial. Stop throwing dirt on them. They're dead already. They're done. just kneel it out. Like, why you gotta keep? Why? Man, there ain't nothing else to say. Florida Memorial, they improved to 3-4 on the season, so they will go down the stretch of the Sun Conference. In Sun Conference play, they're currently 3-1 in conference. I'm not sure what the standings are currently looking like in the Sun Conference. Let me look that up real quick. I'm gonna get that to y'all. So currently, they are tied with Southeastern, who they already have a win over this season. So they have the head-to-head with Southeastern. So in their hopes of a Sun Conference championship berth. The current conference leader, Kaiser, that's their only conference loss. So they already have a loss to Kaiser on their schedule. So it's going to take them winning out and hoping for Kaiser to slip up a couple of times in the final weeks. But they get a domination, domination this past weekend in a win over Thomas University. And we'll see if they can parlay that into a conference championship berth. But other than that, that's going to do it for this week's takeaways. I have been Jarrett Hoffman. If you can, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe to the HBCU Sports YouTube channel. Follow us on all of our social platforms and go to hbcusports.com for all the latest news in HBCU Sports. Until next time, see you guys.